This is the K70 Ultra, Redmi's new flagship phone, and it is priced so aggressively that it might just have the best performance to cost ratio amongst any phone today. So are there any caveats? Why is the Ultra cheaper than the Pro? What does this phone have to offer? Let's find out. If this is your first time here, or in case you just can't remember, my name's Ash, you're watching C4 Retech, and let's get started. The K70 Ultra comes in quite a familiar box. I bought the base variant, which is 12-56. Redmi also offers this phone in 4 other RAM storage configurations that I'll leave up on screen here. Now once we open up the box, we have a black insert that contains the SIM tool, quick start guide, and a solid colored TPU case. Okay, let's now get to the K70 Ultra. I ended up getting the black variant because that was the only one available. Now after some experimentation with the K70 Pro, Redmi's gone back to the muted matte black. They also offer this phone in blue and white, and there are a couple of special Lamborghini editions this time as well. Anyways, coming back to the box, we have a USB Type-A to Type-C cable with orange accents, and that's followed by this 120 watt hypercharge adapter. Using this charger, the K70 Ultra can be charged from 0 to 50 in about 11 minutes and should reach 100% in under 25 minutes. Now yes, it takes longer than the K70 Pro, but there is good reason for that. The battery capacity, it's now 5500 mAh up from 5000, and the best part is Redmi's managed to do that without really increasing the weight. The phone's gotten slightly thicker, it's also gotten slightly shorter, so the form factor, it's overall more or less the same. If you liked how the K70 Pro felt in hand, you're gonna have no issues with the Ultra. Because the materials, this back, it's still frosted glass, one that curves slightly on all 4 sides, the frame is still metal, and at first glance, this looks very K70 series. There are some changes. For example, look closer, and the cameras here, they aren't round anymore. We get a rounded rectangle, which actually reminds me of the Mi logo. It's also worth noting this time they've included an IP68 rating. Now if you go in thinking it's an Ultra, so it's gonna be better than the Pro in every way possible, then you are gonna be disappointed, because yes, it is called the Ultra, but it is priced cheaper than the Pro, substantially cheaper than the Pro. And so there are downgrades. For example, the display, it's still a flat 6.67 inch AMOLED panel, sure, but the resolution is 1.5K down from 2K on the Pro. In my humble opinion, it's not a big issue because this TCL panel, the C8 Plus, it's pretty high quality. It's got support for HDR10 Plus and Dolby Vision. Xiaomi claims a brightness peak of 4000 nits, and in my testing, this panel output a little over 1100 nits. So it's a reasonably bright panel to use outdoors. And the refresh rate, that's also been increased. It's now 144 Hz. There's also 3840 Hz PWM dimming under low light to reduce eye strain. So good quality panel, and the bezels, if you see here, they almost look symmetric. Now on 3 sides, they're the same, 1.7 millimeters. But if you look closer at the chin, you'd notice it's slightly thicker, 1.9 millimeters. It's not really noticeable, it's not gonna bother you, but what might bother you is the fact that the fingerprint scanner, yes, it's still under the display, but the placement, I feel it's a little too low. And talking about placements, the power and volume keys are present to the right. The power key is nicely textured. The secondary speaker and IR blaster are located up top. There's nothing to the left, and to the bottom, here's where we find the primary speaker, microphone, a Type-C port, still USB 2.0 sadly, and a SIM tray which can take 2 nano SIMs, no microSD. Now to the back, once again we have a triple camera array. The primary is Sony's IMX906, a 50 megapixel 1x1.56 inch sensor that's paired with an f1.7 lens that's optically stabilized. It does a fair job under good light, images were well detailed. It's a little conservative with the metering though, as in images might at times come out a tad underexposed. Very mild, not a big issue. Now under low light, let me actually switch to video mode. Now this is what I was seeing. With the night mode, this is the shot the K70 Ultra took. This is the final result I got. Now I'm not gonna call it best in class or anything, but this should give you an idea of how usable this phone is under low light. I feel the primary camera here definitely performs above par. It can even shoot 8K 30 video. The Pro, if you remember, maxed out at 8K 24. The footage is detailed, a little underexposed, but that's not the problem. The problem is the noticeable EIS jitter. Now at 4K 60, this jitter effect is reduced a lot, and the footage, I definitely call it usable, even good. Next up, we have an 8 megapixel ultra wide down from 12 on the Pro, and this doesn't do very well. Images are fine, but when you see them side by side with the primary, you can notice a pinkish hue that creeps in at times. The colors aren't very consistent here. Redmi definitely needs to put some work into the sensor. Now the third one, this is beyond saving. It's an utterly useless 2 megapixel macro. In my opinion, this is the biggest corner cut because the Pro, it has a 50 megapixel 2x telephoto instead. Now moving on to the selfie side of things, we have a 20 megapixel shooter, the OmniVision OV20B, and it performs very well. Images are reasonably detailed, the skin tones are more or less accurate, the dynamic range is also above average. Just make sure you turn off the beauty mode, which is on by default, or you'd end up looking like this. Sadly, video though, it's still capped to 1080-30 and has very heavy EIS jitter, pretty much unusable. Now coming back to positives, the biggest change with this phone, the SoC on the inside. The K70 Ultra is powered by Mediatek's flagship Dimensity 9300 Plus. The 9300 Plus is a very powerful chip that can go toe-to-toe with Qualcomm's Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. In fact, it even outdoes it in some scenarios. The 9300 Plus here, it's paired with 12, 16 or 24 gigs of LPDDR5X RAM and a quarter, half or full terabyte of fast UFS 4.0 storage. The problem with this generation's flagship chip from Mediatek, it's cooling. Now that's because where Qualcomm uses one prime core, Mediatek uses 4. And instead of efficiency cores, Mediatek just uses the performance cores for everything else. And we've seen other phones like Vivo's X100 Pro struggle with taming this beast. Redmi, they've done better here on the K70 Ultra. The stability score is still a little lower than what we saw on the Pro, but given this chip, I wouldn't call it too bad. And the gaming performance, it was actually good. The strong SoC, the excellent display and stereo speakers, they help us get a good overall experience. Redmi's also included a dedicated chip to help boost frame rates and resolution with select games. And while there is throttling, the K70 Ultra never got uncomfortably hot for me in the limited time I've spent with it so far. From a software perspective, this phone is running on HyperOS built atop Android 14, and there's really not a lot of new things to talk about HyperOS here that we've not already seen on other phones I've covered in the past. On this phone, the experience I felt was really good. The interface is fluid, apps opened up quick, the K70 Ultra felt pretty responsive, no complaints. And on that note, let's get to the pricing. Redmi's launched the K70 Ultra a whole 700 RMB cheaper than the K70 Pro's launch price at just 2599 RMB. Now this converts to about 30,000 rupees Indian or $350 US. And for this price, this phone, the K70 Ultra, in my humble opinion, seems to have the best performance to cost ratio. Now, if rumors end up being true and this ends up launching globally as the Xiaomi 14T Pro, and if they manage to keep the pricing within say 30% of the Chinese pricing, I think this phone has the potential to be best in class. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Ash out.